Remember when a fairy tale just needed a grandfather, a sick kid, and the most quotable script of the decade? The Princess
Remember when a fairy tale just needed a grandfather, a sick kid, and the most quotable script of the decade? The Princess Bride was Rob Reiner's 1987 adventure romance comedy. A farm boy named Wesley, played by Cary Elwes, sets off to rescue his true love, Buttercup, played by Robin Wright, from a forced marriage to the slimy Prince Humperdinck, played by Chris Sandon. Along the way, there was a revenge-driven swordsman, Inigo Montoya, played by Mandy Patinkin, a gentle giant, Fezzik, played by Andre the Giant, a scheming Sicilian Visney, played by Wallace Shaw, and a six-fingered villain, Count Rugen, played by Christopher Guest. Today, we're diving into 15 weird facts about The Princess Bride. Now, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps YouTube show this video to more retro movie fans just like you. Now, let's get into the countdown with number 15. Chapter 2, 15. Filming The Princess Bride's Final Kiss, Cary Elwes. For a movie packed with sword fights, giants, and fire swamps, you might think the hardest moment to capture would be something dangerous. But no. One of the trickiest shots in The Princess Bride was simply Wesley and Buttercup's final kiss. Unlike these swirling legends that have built up around the film, it didn't take 30 takes or require chasing sunsets or involve the crew waiting for a magical sliver of daylight. According to Cary Elwes and Robin Wright, the real number was 6. 6 carefully executed takes for one reason. Rob Reiner wanted this moment to land. It wasn't just a kiss. It was the emotional payoff of the entire story. The final image, the one the audience was supposed to carry with them long after the credits rolled. Reiner later said he wanted it to feel like the perfect storybook ending, and Elwes and Wright took that responsibility seriously, and it does show the softness, the calm, that final sense of as you wish coming full circle. It all came from two actors resetting again and again to get the ending just right. Even though it wasn't a stunt and it wasn't a technical marvel, it was just a kiss they wanted to absolutely nail. Of all the scenes in the movie, this was the one where everyone quietly knew we only get one chance to make this the moment that people remember. Number 14. Chapter 3, 14. Cary Elwes on-set injury, Cary Elwes. Cary Elwes powered through on one toe and pure panic. Early in the shoot, Elvis made the classic mistake of accepting a joy ride on Andre the Giant's ATV. One lap around the set, harmless fun, but then gravity got involved, a rock entered the chat, and Elvis learned exactly what it feels like to hear your own bones snap. Now here's where it gets wild. Elvis still had a job to do, so medical attention was in the future, but at least not right away. Mid-budget productions in the 80s weren't known for their compassion toward injured actors. They were known for replacement calls, so he powered through, favored the foot, and quietly negotiated with pain between takes. That slightly stiff walk into the fire swamp was not acting. That was damage control in real time. Elvis adjusted his posture, shifted his weight, and basically directed his own cover-up so the cameras wouldn't catch what casting directors might. The timing couldn't have been worse. Music, the sword fight with Mandy Patinkin, the movie's crown jewel, was still on schedule. Rob Reiner shuffled production, pushed the duel to the end of the shoot, and hoped for the best. It almost worked. Elvis went into that legendary fight still not fully healed. Every leap, spin, and flourish came with a quiet reminder that one bad landing could end everything. So yeah, Wesley looks effortless, but behind the mask was an actor fencing on adrenaline, stubbornness, and a toe that absolutely did not sign up for this movie. Andre the Giant didn't drink like a mortal. By the time The Princess Bride was filming, Andre's body was in open revolt. Decades of professional wrestling and a condition called acromegaly, which never stopped, meant constant grinding pain. Doctors were cautious with prescriptions. Painkillers that worked on normal humans barely touched him. So Andre self-medicated the only way that actually worked. His drink of choice became the stuff of legend, a custom cocktail served in a pitcher. 40 ounces of hard liquor mixed without hesitation and consumed like lemonade on a summer porch. Cast and crew watched him put these away one after another. Then the thing needed a name, so someone called it the American. It stuck. The unsettling part wasn't the volume. It was the effect or lack thereof. Wrestlers and co-stars all tell the same story. Amounts that would hospitalize a regular person barely move the needle for Andre. Slightly Buzzed was about as dramatic as it ever got. By the end of a London shoot, the hotel had receipts. Literal receipts. One room, one guest, a bar tab so massive it looked like catering for a rap party. No food, no room service, just drinks. These stories sound made up until you remember who we're talking about. Andre wasn't built to human scale. His pain wasn't human-sized, and neither was the only relief that he could find. Number 12. Chapter 5, 12. The Princess Bride book's biggest secret, William Goldman. The book was a giant meta prank. The movie messes with your head. The book takes it further, gaslighting you for 300 pages and daring you to thank it afterward. William Goldman didn't just write The Princess Bride. He pretended he didn't. The whole novel is framed as an abridgment of a longer, more boring book by a completely fictional author named S. Morgenstern. According to Goldman, the original was bloated with endless political history and tedious descriptions, all of which he, the humble editor, graciously cut out for your benefit. None of it was real, though. There was no Morgenstern, no original text. Goldman wrote every word and invented a fake author just to mess with people. And he committed hard. The book is loaded with fake footnotes, invented publishing disputes, and long digressions about Goldman's fictional family, his made-up wife, made-up son, their made-up reactions to a book that doesn't exist. At one point, he argues with imaginary lawyers in the margins. It's unhinged in the best possible way. The ending goes even further, teasing a sequel called Buttercup's Baby, complete with fake legal drama explaining why you'll never get to read it. Fans spent years trying to track down a book that was never written because Goldman's bit was just that convincing. It's satire, metafiction, and also somehow a completely sincere fairy tale romance. Goldman built a story that lies to you on every page and still makes you fall for it. That takes talent or sociopathy. Chapter 6, 11. How VHS made The Princess Bride a classic, Rob Reiner. Maybe a little bit of both. Number 11. The movie only became a hit through VHS. To be honest with you, The Princess Bride flumped. Flumped might be a bit strong, but we'll say it politely face-planted into a pile of modest returns and confused marketing. When the film hit theaters in 1987, Studio had no clue how to sell it. Fairy tale, romance, comedy. The posters couldn't pick a lane, and half the marketing made it look like a straight-up kids movie, which meant teenagers avoided it, adults ignored it, and the only people showing up were families who weren't sure what they'd walked into. The numbers tell the story. On a $16 million budget, The Princess Bride pulled in around $30 million domestically. It wasn't a bomb by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely not the kind of hit that gets you a corner office. By Hollywood math, it was a shrug. Then VHS happened. Once the movie landed on home video, everything changed. Families rented it on a whim. Kids watched it on repeat until the tape wore thin. College kids quoted it at parties. Inconceivable became a punchline in dorm rooms across America. There was no marketing blitz, no studio push, just word of mouth and a rewind button. People kept telling their friends, "You have to see this." And their friends actually listened. By the early 90s, The Princess Bride had quietly transformed from theatrical underperformer to cultural staple. The kind of movie people owned, not just watched. And it did it all without a single sequel, reboot, or extended universe. So yeah, The Princess Bride didn't conquer the box office. It conquered the living room, one worn-out VHS tape at a time. Number 10. Chapter 7. 10. Why Hollywood called The Princess Bride unfilmable, Rob Reiner. For nearly 2 decades, The Princess Bride was Hollywood kryptonite. Studios loved the script. They just had no idea what to do with it. William Goldman adapted the screenplay himself from his own best-selling novel. And even that wasn't enough. Studio after studio passed, not because the material was bad, but because nobody could figure out what genre it actually was. The project pinballed through development hell for so long that Goldman eventually bought the rights back himself. He was convinced the movie would either never get made or get butchered into something unrecognizable. When a writer buys back his own work out of self-defense, you know the system is broken. But here's where it gets interesting. Rob Reiner came off this as Spinal Tap looking for his next project, read Goldman's script, and didn't try to fix anything. He leaned into all of it. The sincerity, the jokes, the sword fights, the weirdness. Even the story's strangest choice stayed intact. A grandfather reading the story to his sick grandson. That framing device came straight from Goldman's novel. And despite what you'd expect, the studio never tried to cut it, which is kind of a miracle. Modern executives would axe that in about 12 seconds and replace it with a Marvel tie-in. So yeah, Hollywood spent years calling The Princess Bride unfilmable. It was too funny, too sincere, and too many genres crammed into one movie. Turns out that was exactly why it worked. The cliffs of insanity were actually 700 foot tall. When the movie called them the Cliffs of Insanity, that wasn't fantasy world building. That was just accurate tourism. The production filmed those shots at the cliffs of Moore on Ireland's west coast. No green screen or matte painting, just raw Atlantic coastline and a drop that would ruin your whole afternoon. At their highest point, the cliffs rise about 700 feet above the water. So when Wesley's scaling a sheer rock face while Vizzini shrieks above him, that height is real. And the weather was exactly as insane as the name suggests. The cliffs of Moore are famous for sudden wind gusts that can hit 80 miles per hour. Strong enough to send loose shale flying back up the cliff. Strong enough to make standing near the edge a genuinely terrible idea. The crew wasn't just filming a fantasy adventure. They were trying not to become one. Here's the thing. Rob Reiner could have faked it. Plenty of movies would have built a cliff face on a soundstage and called it a day, but Reiner wanted the real deal, and you can feel it. There's a weight to those shots that a studio backdrop just can't replicate. Number 8. Chapter 9. 8. The Spinal Tap Easter Egg, Mark Knopfler. The Spinal Tap hat that held the music hostage. Rob Reiner smuggled a joke across 2 movies, and it only cost him a custom-made baseball cap. In the framing scenes of The Princess Bride, there's a hat hanging in the grandson's bedroom. If you blink, you're going to miss it. But if you survived the early VHS era, you will recognize it immediately. That cap is pure Spinal Tap energy, a callback to Reiner's mockumentary masterpiece. Here's the story. Reiner wanted Mark Knopfler, the Dire Straits guy, to score the film. Knopfler said yes, but with one condition. He wanted a visual nod to Reiner's Spinal Tap character tucked somewhere in the movie. Same style, same vibe, a deeply nerdy Easter egg for an audience of maybe 12 people. But there was a problem. The original hat was gone. Because of course it was. So production rebuilt it from scratch, tweaked the lettering just enough to dodge legal trouble, and planted it in the background where only the most obsessive fans would ever spot it. Knopfler later admitted he wasn't even serious. The whole request was actually a joke. Reiner made the hat anyway. Sometimes the best Easter eggs exist because someone called a bluff and nobody backed down. Alright, we need to take a quick pause because if you're enjoying this trip through Florin and Gilder, hit that like button before Vizzini declares it inconceivable. And if you want more deep dives into the weird, wild stories behind your favorite classics, hit that subscribe button. Alright, let's get back to the weirdness with number 7. Chapter 10, 7. Andre the Giant's Hidden Filming Challenge. Andre the Giant. Andre's back was so bad he couldn't lift anyone. Andre the Giant was billed as one of the strongest men on the planet. By the time he filmed The Princess Bride, however, he could barely carry himself. Years of professional wrestling had destroyed Andre's back. His size of over 7 feet tall and pushing 500 pounds was the result of acromegaly, a condition that never stopped affecting his body. By 1986, his spine was so deteriorated that he was in constant pain. Lifting another human being was out of the question. The crew rigged hidden platforms, scaffolding, and wires to make it look like Andre was doing the heavy lifting. Robin Wright and Carrie Elwes would stand on concealed supports while Andre simply placed his hands around them. Camera angles did the rest. On screen, Fezzik looked like he could toss a horse. Off-screen, the production team was engineering every shot to protect their gentle giant, and Andre never complained, not once. Cast members later said he was one of the kindest, most gracious people on set, even when he was clearly hurting. What audiences saw was an unstoppable mountain of a man. What actually happened was an entire crew working overtime to make sure Andre could get through every scene without injuring himself further. Fezzik may have been the muscle of the operation, but behind the scenes, it took a small army to make that muscle look effortless. Number 6. Chapter 11. 6. Cary Elwes real knockout scene, Christopher Guest. Cary Elwes got knocked out for real. Cary Elwes wanted the knockout scene to look real, and he got his wish granted. During the scene where Count Rugen knocks Wesley unconscious with the hilt of his sword, Elwes had a brilliant idea. Instead of faking it, why not have Christopher Guest actually tap him on the head? Just a little love tap. Enough to sell the moment. What's the worst that could happen? Well, Christopher Guest happened. Guest wasn't exactly a trained stunt coordinator. He swung, misjudged the force, and cracked Ellis hard enough to send him crumpling to the ground for real. The set went dead silent for a few very long seconds. Nobody knew if their leading man was going to get back up. He did eventually, but that collapse you see in the film is not Wesley acting unconscious. That's Cary Elwes actually unconscious. Rob Reiner kept the take because of course he did. You can't fake that kind of authenticity, mainly because it wasn't fake at all. Ellis later joked about it, but at the time the crew was genuinely rattled. One overeager sword tab, one miscalculated swing, and the Princess Bride almost lost its dread Pirate Roberts to a method acting experiment gone sideways. The lesson is if you're going to ask someone to tap you gently on the head, maybe make sure they know what that gently means first. The rat suit actor, who was harder to track than an ROUS. The rodents of unusual size weren't CGI creatures or animatronic puppets. They were stunt performers, including a little person circus acrobat named Anil Kali, who had actually spent part of his career wrestling live animals in a traveling show. So, in a weird way, crawling in a giant rat suit wasn't that far off his resume. The suits, however, were brutally hot and almost impossible to see through, and heavy enough that the crew had to periodically peel performers out of them, so they didn't overheat. But the real challenge came from Kali himself, because he kept disappearing in the middle of filming. At first, the crew thought he was just sneaking off to catch his breath. But eventually, they discovered the truth. Kali had been temporarily living on the production's remote soundstage, not hiding from law enforcement, just hiding from London's, let's call them, enthusiastic parking officers. He'd racked up a string of unpaid parking fines, and instead of dealing with them, he figured the Fire Swamp set was as good a place as any to lay low for a few days. So, while Cary Elwes was fencing foam rats, the crew was occasionally wandering around the maze-like stage muttering, "Has anyone seen Anthal?" Despite the chaos, Kali delivered. He performed most of the rats' big lunges and tackles, including the moment Wesley gets dragged across the ground with a level of commitment that only someone who used to wrestle real animals could bring. So yes, the ROUS scenes look unhinged because the production was sometimes missing an actual rat man. Number 4. The sword fight was 100% real. That duel between Inigo Montoya and the Man in Black was not choreographed to look real. It was all actually real. Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin did their own fencing. No stunt doubles hiding behind wigs. No camera tricks to cover sloppy footwork. The only moments handed off to professionals were the acrobatic flips. All of the parrying, thrust, and blade clash moments were two actors who trained like they were preparing for actual combat. And the training was no joke. Both worked under fencing legends Bob Anderson and Peter Diamond. The same guys who choreographed lightsaber duels for a little franchise called Star Wars. Ever hear of it? Patinkin trained for 6 months. Elvis was for 8 to 10 hours a day, and they even learned to fence with both hands, which is why the choreography has that seamless, almost musical precision. Oh, and those fancy technique names dropped mid-duel were Agria, Capo, Tybalt, and Bonetti. This is not fantasy gibberish. Those are actual 16th and 17th century fencing masters, pulled straight from historical manuals. William Goldman didn't make them up. He did his music homework. The payoff, of course, is the big reveal. Neither man is actually left-handed. They've been sandbagging the whole fight just to make it more interesting. That gag came directly from Goldman's novel, And it works because you've just watched two guys who clearly can fence pretend they've been holding back. Most movie sword fights age like milk. This one still holds up because it wasn't smoke and mirrors. It was two committed actors, months of sweat, and a choreographer who worked with Darth Vader. Number 3. Wallace Shawn feared he'd be fired daily. Wallace Shawn spent most of the Princess Bride shoot waiting for someone to tap him on the shoulder and say, "Hey, thanks, but we're going another direction." The role of Vizzini, the self-proclaimed genius mastermind with a fatal overconfidence problem, had originally been earmarked for Danny DeVito. When DeVito passed, Shawn got the call, but instead of celebrating, he spiraled. He had a full-blown panic attack early in production, then another, then just a general low-grade dread that followed him to set every single day. He was convinced Rob Reiner had made a mistake casting him and was just waiting for the right moment to pull the plug. Here's the thing, though. That nervous energy worked. Shawn's jittery delivery, his darting eyes, and the way he spits out inconceivable, like a man who's never once been wrong in his life, was a guy running on espresso-level anxiety and sheer determination not to get fired before lunch. The very thing that made him miserable on set is exactly what made Vizzini one of the most quotable villains in movie history. Turns out imposter syndrome pairs beautifully with megalomania. Number 2, Billy Crystal was so funny, he actually injured Mandy Patinkin. Billy Crystal only worked on The Princess Bride for one day. In that time, he got the director banned from his own set, turned his co-star into a prop, and sent another one home with a bruised rib. All because he couldn't tell the same joke twice. Crystal improvised nearly everything as Miracle Max. New lines, new bits, new timing, take after take. The crew wasn't watching a performance. They were watching a man in old age makeup hold an entire film set hostage with comedy. Rob Reiner tried to hang in there. He really did. But after ruining too many takes with his own laughter, the director had to physically leave the room and watch from a monitor. His own movie, Behind Glass, like he was in comedy jail. Cary Elwes had an even bigger problem. He was supposed to be mostly dead, laying still, silent, motionless, and Crystal kept making him break. Eventually, the production just gave up and swapped him out for a dummy in certain shots. Elvis wasn't fired. He was benched for laughing too hard. And then there's Mandy Patinkin. While desperately trying to hold it together during the scene, he strained himself so badly he bruised a rib. Over the years, that story's grown into torn muscle and internal injury, but Patinkin's confirmed it was a rib bruise caused entirely by suppressed laughter. Andre the Giant's legendary 16-second fart. Okay, we're ending this countdown the only way we can with the single greatest behind-the-scenes moment in Princess Bride history. And yes, it involves Andre the Giant's digestive system. The scene was a quiet rehearsal on a plywood set built to look like a castle parapet. Rob Reiner decided to roll cameras and capture a casual run-through. The cast at their marks. Physics asks about the miracle pill. Ango responds. Wesley stirs awake. Professional, calm, and textbook. Then Andre delivered his line and immediately released what multiple witnesses would later describe as the world's most earth-shaking fart in cinematic history. The plywood rattled. The sound mixer yanked off his headphones. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. They just stood there processing. Someone had the presence of mind to time it. 16 seconds. It wasn't one long, monotone fart either. This thing had dynamics. Rise, fall, peaks, valleys. One cast member later called it a symphony, which is either poetic or deeply traumatizing depending on where you were standing. Andre, meanwhile, was completely at peace, gently rocking, smiling like a man who had just achieved something spiritual. When the crew finally broke and Reiner doubled over, Andre looked over and delivered the only acceptable follow-up. I am now boss. And there you have it. 15 weird and wild facts about the Princess Bride that you probably didn't know. Drop a comment and let us know which one caught you off guard. And if you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe and share it with a friend who still quotes Inigo Montoya at every opportunity. Until next time, this is Remember When.